If I had to put a title to this video, I think I'd call it How Your Nervous System Can Bring You Anything You Desire. And what I'm going to read from today is a little over a year ago, I started doing this thing that I affectionately call the Doberman Danagram. And it's for my silver and gold nights in my marketing Camelot. And it's a weekly telegram I made it look like those old Western Union telegrams. So like I'm so old school, it goes out in a hard copy. It's an actual like an oversized postcard that looks like a telegram, and it goes out weekly. And what I'm going to read you is the content I wrote for the very second Doberman Danagram ever published. And it says, Dear Knight of the Round Table, once you realize what a marvel your brain and nervous system are, and that you can leverage their abilities and gifts to create any kind of life you desire, you'll start protecting them like all the gold that used to be in Fort Knox. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, my noble knight, you have been given a gift of immeasurable power. Now is the time to start to realize its power, harness that power, and more than ever before, protect that power like the pearl of great price it is. And here's how not to do it. Just the other day, I saw my neighbor taking out the trash. The entire trip there and the entire trip back, all the way to walking through his front door, he had his nose buried in his smartphone. He was completely absorbed in it, actually hypnotized. Now, I have no earthly idea what he was reading or watching, but I'd bet you dollars to donuts it was the typical mind-numbing drivel that proliferates SDM. That's what I call it. SDM stands for social disease media. And so many other sites, probably created by AI, like we talked about in the January 2023 Doberman Dan letter. Oh yeah, I did an entire issue in my newsletter of how so much online is fake. The content, the influencers, just all created by AI. And the people, the followers, so many fake profiles and people. Just, anywho, we continue. The very next day, I saw him walking his dog doing the exact same thing, completely oblivious to the beautiful outside world the Creator has given us, robbing himself of the opportunity to find the extraordinary in the ordinary. I immediately thought to myself, stick a fork in it, humankind is done. You see, he's not the exception. Nowadays, these are the actions of the majority. In the past, I would say the majority is the 80%ers, the good old 80-20 rule, right? But over the past couple of decades, I believe the Pareto principle has changed. It now appears to skew more towards 90-10, maybe even 95-5. And the damage done to the human mind, both individual and collective, has been devastating. You see, every second of every day, there are forces all around you programming you. Very, very few, in fact, probably darn near close to zero, are programming you for your benefit. It's all designed to turn you into a mindless robot drone slave for the powers that be that have taken control of this world. And if that's not what you desire for your life, and what knight in his right mind would? You need to be on guard against this 24/7, because your enemy never takes a rest from this incessant onslaught against your most powerful weapon, your mind. Which is why we must be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he can devour. Or more accurately, the clueless moron who allows himself to be devoured. Here's an example of how insidious this constant attack is. Darn near everywhere you go, there's programming aimed at your mind. Ever notice that every commercial establishment always has music playing? Seems innocent enough, right? Most of the time it's just in the background, barely noticeable, but it all gets recorded. So the other day I noticed a song looping in my head, a song I don't even like. And I thought, where in the world did that come from? Aside from the decades of hearing it from various sources, I tracked it back to the Muzak that was playing when I was in the bank. Since I've recently been forced to become ever vigilant, constantly taking every thought captive to the Christ consciousness mind, the power within us to direct our lives for good, I immediately replaced that slave thinking with thoughts that serve my desires and the greater good of mankind. You see, my beloved Banneret, this is the kind of vigilance required to protect your mind in these ever increasing evil times in which we live. Because if you're not constantly aware of this ongoing attack against you, if you're not relentlessly taking every thought captive, by default, you're surrendering to the enemy's agenda. And the end result of that is not good. Not good at all. You see the evidence of it everywhere. Long story short, you'll be broke, enslaved, both financially and emotionally, and miserable most of the time. You see, our thoughts create emotions, and that determines our actions. Our actions create habits, and our habits determine our destiny. You can allow that process to happen by default, which means that others will create your destiny for you. Or you can nip all that in the bud, be ever vigilant, take every thought captive, and create your own destiny. And since we have been given the choice to take control of our mind, brain, and nervous system, or allow others to control it, either by choice or default, the end result is ultimately your responsibility. The bottom line is this: we have been given the power between life and death, blessing and curse. And the eternal laws that govern the universe call heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Because as above, the thoughts you allow to percolate, as I like to say, in your mind, so below, the inevitable results produced. Sadly, most of my life, I allowed this process to happen without my conscious control, and the results were not at all what I desired. In fact, it made life just plain suck. I was broke, enslaved by a job I hated, and I constantly struggled with anxiety, depression, and physical pain that always results from those emotional disorders. Heck, even after I figured out how to make a boatload of bucks with direct response marketing and have freed myself from a life of wage slavery, much of the time I was still miserable because I had not yet taken control 100% and grabbed the reins of my mind to take every thought captive to the Christ consciousness mind. But let me tell you, once you're able to grok this and do the simple actions required to create the destiny you desire, your life is going to be transformed in ways that will blow your ever loving mind. In my case, that's a very small explosion. And I ended like I always end most of my newsletters and my Doberman Danograms. I ended with Pax Vobiscum. Hope you found that helpful.